Hey guys, tonight we step quietly into a world where the clinking of ale mugs mingles with whispered prayers, the medieval convent. You're standing just inside the heavy wooden door of a convent, nestled in the misty hills of Europe, the air thick with the scent of damp stone, burning tallow, and brewing barley. Imagine the hum of daily life, the soft chanting of nuns in the chapel, the scratch of quills on parchment, and somewhere nearby, the bubbling of ale vats. Yes, ale. You probably won't survive the rigor of medieval brewing if you think it's all about monks and monasteries, because the nuns were quietly raising their own frothy game, often outbrewing their brothers in habits. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, why not drop your location and local time in the comments? It's always fun to see where in the world you're settling down to listen. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You follow a narrow corridor lined with stone walls thick enough to keep secrets, and it leads you to the convent's brewery, a modest room filled with wooden barrels, earthenware pots, and the faintest hint of hops. The brewing space is humble but alive with purpose. Here nuns toil patiently over ale recipes that had been passed down and perfected in secret for generations. The ale is more than just a drink, it's sustenance medicine, and sometimes even a spiritual offering. Historians still argue whether nuns brewed primarily for their own sustenance or if they became early pioneers in the European brewing economy. You get the sense it's a bit of both, with plenty of quiet determination on the nuns' part. You hear the steady drip of wort, boiling the clatter of wooden paddles, stirring frothy mixtures, and the occasional burst of laughter, a reminder that behind the heavy robes and sacred vows were women mastering a craft that warmed the hearts and hearths of many. The story of medieval nun brewing is surprisingly rich, filled with innovation, rivalry, and quiet resilience, a legacy far richer than the pale ale it produced. You trudge deeper into the convent's brewing chambers, where the smell of malted barley mingles with the damp stone and flickering candlelight. The room is modest, but every surface tells a story. Wooden vats darkened by years of use, copper kettles that catch the soft glow of flames, and shelves lined with earthenware jars of herbs and spices. The nuns' brewing began as an act of self-sufficiency, producing safe, nutritious drinks in an age when water could be perilous. But soon, it evolved into something more, a blend of devotion and craft, a way to sustain body and soul. You watch as one sister carefully measures crushed barley, the grain slipping through her fingers like tiny golden secrets. Nearby, another stirs a bubbling mixture, adding a pinch of herbs whose names have been whispered through generations: sweet gale yarrow, and even juniper berries. This herbal alchemy gave nun-brewed ales a unique flavor, often sharper, richer, and more complex than those made by their monastic counterparts. While monks might rely on tradition, nuns were known to experiment with ingredients, pushing boundaries under the veil of humility. The brewing was a delicate dance of timing and temperature, knowledge passed down through manuscripts written in the quiet hours between prayers. One particularly treasured recipe even calls for a day of fasting before the brewing begins, believed to bless the ale with purity. Historians still argue whether these practices were strictly spiritual or practical. Some see the convent breweries as early centers of brewing innovation, others as simply fulfilling domestic needs. You get the feeling the truth is beautifully tangled in both. As the ale ferments quietly in cool stone cellars, the nuns balance their work with prayer, weaving the sacred and the everyday into a tapestry that sustained their community and influenced the world beyond. The process, as you observe, is both art and devotion, slow, meticulous, and ever so slightly rebellious. You find yourself in the heart of the convent, where the brewing room hums quietly with activity. The air is warm, heavy, with the earthy aroma of malt and the faint bitterness of hops. The nuns move with practiced grace, their habits swishing softly as they tend to the ale with unwavering focus. You watch a sister carefully selecting grains from a woven basket, barley, oats, and sometimes rye, all sourced from the convent's lands or nearby farms. She explains in a voice as calm as a still pond how each grain adds a subtle note to the final brew. Barley for sweetness, oats for body, rye for a hint of spice. Nearby, another nun adjusts a clay pot, filled with herbs sweet gale, to soothe the throat, yarrow for clarity, and occasionally juniper, to add that piney sharpness loved by many. Their choices reflect centuries of empirical knowledge refined through trial and taste. The brewing process itself is a precise ritual. First, the grains are soaked and malted, releasing sugars essential for fermentation. The wort is then boiled with herbs, added at just the right moment to infuse flavor without overwhelming bitterness. Finally, the ale is cooled and left to ferment in cool stone vats. The nuns' innovations weren't just about taste. They developed techniques to improve shelf life and clarity, often rivaling or surpassing the brews made in neighboring monasteries. Their ale was known for a balance of sweetness and bitterness, a drink both nourishing and refreshing. You learn that many convent breweries were hidden gems supplying local communities and pilgrims alike. Their ales often carried subtle medicinal properties thanks to the carefully chosen herbs. Historians still argue whether these brewing advancements were widely shared or jealously guarded secrets of the convents. You suspect the answer varies from place to place as individual convents prize their unique methods. For now, you savor the rich aroma surrounding you, imagining how these humble beginnings shaped a legacy of brewing excellence often overshadowed by their male counterparts. You step through the arched doorway into the heart of the convent's bustling brewing space, a sacred workshop where spirituality and craftsmanship intertwine. The room is alive with quiet energy, steam rising from copper kettles, wooden paddles stirring bubbling mixtures, and the soft clink of ceramic jugs being filled. Here, the nuns transform humble ingredients into elixirs that warm bodies and lift spirits. The stone floors bear the marks of generations worn smooth by footsteps and the occasional spilled brew. Sconces flicker with candlelight, casting dancing shadows on rough-hewn beams overhead. You watch as a sister gently tends to a fermentation barrel, checking its temperature with a practiced touch. The ale's journey from grain to glass is slow and deliberate, each step infused with care and tradition. The yeast, a living organism cultivated lovingly over years, breathes life into the mixture, transforming it into the frothy nectar known throughout the region. The brewing process takes place within these walls, yet the convent's influence extends beyond. The ale crafted here finds its way to local markets, festivals, and pilgrims, spreading the nuns' reputation far and wide. Interestingly, convent brewing spaces often doubled as places of learning where novices were taught not only prayers, but also the delicate arts of fermentation and herbal medicine. The quiet clatter of ale production provided a rhythm to convent life, punctuating moments of reflection with the promise of communal celebration. Historians still argue whether these breweries served primarily practical needs or became centers of brewing innovation that shaped wider medieval culture. Whatever the answer, the nuns' mastery of their craft left an indelible mark on brewing history. As you inhale the rich scent of malt and hops, you can almost taste the dedication, resilience, and quiet rebellion behind every pour. You trudge past the chapel's stained glass windows, their colored light dappling the stone floor like spilled jewels, and find yourself facing one of the more unexpected rivalries of medieval life nuns versus monks in the art of ale brewing. Though monasteries have long held fame as centers of brewing, producing ales enjoyed by kings and peasants alike, the nuns' breweries quickly earned reputations for quality and innovation that could rival and sometimes surpass their male counterparts. Word traveled beyond convent walls of the nuns' ales, noted for their fuller bodies, nuanced flavors, and sometimes surprising medicinal qualities. Their secret willingness to experiment with unusual herbs and precise brewing techniques passed down through generations of sisters. The rivalry, however, was largely friendly, marked more by spirited exchanges and whispered competition than outright conflict. Monks might boast of their long aging processes, while nuns retorted with recipes that blended flavor and health benefits seamlessly. You imagine secret tasting sessions, cloaked sisters and robed monks comparing brews by candlelight, smirking behind veils and cowls. The occasional smuggling of recipes between monasteries and convents kept both sides on their toes. Historians still debate whether this rivalry significantly influenced the evolution of European brewing, or was more of a social dynamic shaped by gender roles and resource access. Regardless, it's clear that nuns played a pivotal, if often overlooked, role. Beyond competition, convent breweries served as hubs of community and charity. Surpluses were distributed to the poor, pilgrims were offered warm hospitality. Accompanied by fresh ale and brewing, provided much-needed income to sustain convent life. You marvel at the quiet power wielded through these brews crafted not with swords, but with patience and skill. As the day fades, the gentle clinking of ale mugs and soft laughter echo through convent walls, a testament to the enduring legacy of these industrious women. You move through the convent's dim corridors, arriving at a small chamber filled with manuscripts and scrolls, the convent's brewing library. This is where the art of ale-making is preserved and refined, a treasure trove of knowledge penned in careful script over centuries. You pick up a thick vellum manuscript, its pages yellowed with age, containing detailed recipes and instructions. Some recipes call for familiar ingredients, malted barley water and yeast. Others list herbs and spices that surprise you, sweet gale, mugwort, and even spruce tips, lending unique flavors and supposed healing properties. The manuscripts aren't just cookbooks. They're records of experiments, notes on successes and failures, and even reflections on the spiritual significance of brewing. A particularly poetic passage describes ale as the nectar that binds earth and spirit. You learn that brewing was considered a sacred act, blending earthly toil with divine blessing. The nuns often invoked prayers and blessings during the brewing process, asking for purity and prosperity. These recipes were carefully guarded, shared only within convent walls, ensuring the uniqueness of each community's brew. Some manuscripts include illustrations, hand-drawn barley stalks, detailed diagrams of brewing vats, and symbolic motifs, intertwining faith and craft. Historians still debate how widespread the circulation of such texts was, with some suggesting a network of knowledge exchange between convents and monasteries, while others argue many secrets remained closely held. You flip through a page detailing the ideal brewing seasons, noting how timing affected flavor and fermentation. The recipes emphasize patience, precision, and respect for the natural rhythms of the year. The quiet dedication of these women, recording their craft so meticulously, speaks volumes about their role not just as brewers, but as stewards of tradition and innovation. As you set the manuscript down, the warm scent of fermenting ale drifts in a reminder that the past's secrets continued to bubble beneath the surface, waiting to be savored. The convent's infirmary is a quiet, dimly lit place where healing herbs and remedies line the shelves. You find it curious that ale brewed with care by the nuns was considered not only a drink of joy, but also a potent medicine. In medieval times, water was often unsafe to drink, and ale, with its boiled ingredients, and fermentation offered a safer alternative. But beyond safety, the herbs and brewing methods imbued the ale with medicinal qualities. You watch as a sister prepares a batch of ale infused with yarrow, known for its healing properties, and elderflower, believed to soothe fevers. The process is slow and exacting. Every ingredient measured, every step infused with intention. This ale was served not only during meals, but also administered as a tonic for the sick, a remedy for digestive woes, and even as a calming draught for those troubled by anxiety. It was common for nuns to act as healers in their communities, blending their knowledge of plants with brewing expertise. This dual role elevated their status and widened their influence beyond the cloister walls. There are stories of convent-brewed ales curing ailments that baffled town physicians, though you suspect some of these tales grew taller with each retelling. Historians still debate the actual efficacy of these remedies versus their placebo effect or symbolic importance in the healing rituals. Regardless, the role of ale as medicine is a fascinating blend of faith, science, and tradition. As the ale bubbles gently in its wooden vat, you appreciate how brewing was more than a craft. It was a lifeline, woven through daily monastic life. And as you taste a small cup of this restorative brew, its warmth spreads, reminding you that even the most humble of creations can hold profound power. You step into the convent's brewing workshop, where the tools of the trade tell stories as old as the craft itself. Wooden mash tubs, copper kettles, and stone malting floors speak to centuries of innovation and perseverance. The brewing equipment might seem simple, but it was a marvel of medieval technology. Large wooden vats held the mash, the mixture of malted grains and water, while copper kettles boiled the wort, releasing sweet aromas that filled the air. You watch as a sister skillfully manages the fire beneath a copper kettle, maintaining a precise temperature essential for proper brewing. Too hot and the ale could scorch. Too cool and fermentation would falter. You notice small wooden paddles used for stirring and clay fermentation vessels that kept the ale cool during the long fermentation process. Some convents even used rudimentary temperature control techniques, burying vats in earth or placing them in shaded cellars to keep the brew steady. The equipment was often handmade by skilled artisans within the convent or nearby villages, tailored to the specific brewing styles and volumes required. You also spot an alembic, an early distillation apparatus, hinting that some nuns may have experimented with stronger spirits or medicinal extracts, though such endeavors were likely limited by church regulations. Historians still argue about how widespread and advanced these brewing technologies were, but there's no doubt that the convents maintained high standards. You think about how the marriage of simple tools and dedicated hands produced ales that were not only tasty, but vital for health, economy, and community. Watching the brewing process unfold, you appreciate the blend of science, art, and devotion that made the convent's ale so special. You find yourself amid the bustling economic heart of the convent, where ale isn't just a humble beverage, it's a source of income, influence, and unexpected power. The brewing rooms open into storerooms, stacked with barrels ready to be distributed far beyond the convent walls. Nuns managed the trade with a quiet shrewdness balancing production quality and the demands of local markets. Ale was sold to villagers, pilgrims, and even nearby towns, bringing much-needed funds to support the convent's spiritual and charitable missions. You notice the careful bookkeeping ledgers detailing sales debts and deliveries, proof that these women were not only master brewers, but also savvy managers. The convent's ale was prized for its consistency and flavor, often commanding better prices than those produced elsewhere. This economic clout helped convents maintain independence and sustain their communities through difficult times. Market days saw the convent's ale booths attracting crowds eager for a taste of the nuns' renowned brew. You can almost hear the laughter, the clinking of mugs, and the lively bargaining. Historians still debate how widespread convent breweries' commercial reach was, with some suggesting they were major regional players, while others see their sales as more modest and community-focused. Regardless, the impact of nun-brewed ale on medieval economies was undeniable, a blend of piety, craft, and entrepreneurship. As you walk through the storerooms, the scent of aged ale mingles with the earthy tones of oak barrels, reminding you that this simple drink was also a symbol of resilience and resourcefulness. You find yourself amidst the lively bustle of a medieval market day where convent-brewed ale spills into the air like a fragrant invitation. Stalls are draped in colorful cloths, and the chatter of townsfolk blends with the clang of blacksmiths and the cries of vendors. The nuns' ale booth is a beacon, smoky wood barrels gleaming under the sun-jugs filled with frothy amber nectar, and a queue of eager customers stretching through the crowd. You watch as villagers, merchants, and pilgrims alike savor the rich flavors. The ale is praised for its smooth balance, bold enough to warm the chill of a long day, but gentle enough to sip slowly. Festivals and fairs became key venues for convents to showcase their brews-building reputation and goodwill beyond the cloisters. Ale was more than a drink. It was a social lubricant, a shared pleasure that connected communities. You overhear a conversation about a particularly fine batch rumored to have been brewed with a secret blend of herbs known only to the sisters. Whispers say it could soothe aches, sharpen the mind, and even inspire poetry. The brewing sisters themselves often attended these events, their presence blending humility with pride. Their modest habits contrasted with the joyful noise, a reminder of the sacred origins of their craft. Historians still debate how central these festivals were to the convent's economic and social influence, but no one disputes the role of ale as a cornerstone of medieval community life. As the sun sets and torches flicker to life, music swells and laughter echoes, you feel the pulse of a world where faith, fellowship, and fermentation dance together in warm harmony. You find yourself amid the inevitable challenges of brewing life, a dance between precision and chance, where even the most careful nun must wrestle with spoilage and the dreaded bad batch. The convent cellar, cool and dim, holds barrels in various stages of fermentation, some bubbling steadily, others silent or suspiciously pungent. You watch a sister inspecting a vat, her face a mixture of concern and determination. A sour smell wafts from one barrel, a sign the yeast has gone rogue or the mixture has been contaminated. Such mishaps could ruin an entire season's production, impacting both sustenance and income. Despite the risk, nuns developed ingenious methods to salvage or prevent spoilage. Adding certain herbs, adjusting fermentation times, and carefully monitoring temperature were all part of their arsenal. They also relied on taste tests, a process requiring a finely tuned palate and a strong stomach. You overhear a whispered tale of a convent where a bad batch led to a temporarily halted festival and a secret midnight brewing to redeem their reputation. The story ends with laughter and a toast to resilience. Quality control was an ongoing challenge, balancing tradition with innovation. You note how brewing records often included detailed notes on failures, showcasing a culture willing to learn from mistakes. Historians still argue how much of medieval brewing was controlled by trial and error versus inherited wisdom, but the convent's records suggest a blend of both with a serious commitment to excellence. As the cellar door creaks open, cool air rushes in, carrying the complex scents of malt hops and hope reminders that every brew is a small victory in a long tradition of persistence. You settle into the story of notable nun brewers, remarkable women whose skill and dedication earned them local fame and respect. One such figure is Sister Hildegard of Bingen, a German abbess known for her wisdom writings and possibly her brewing talents, weaving healing herbs into her ales that were said to ease both body and soul. Another is Dame Juliana of Norwich, who, while more renowned for her spiritual visions, lived in a community where brewing was central and likely had hands on the vats blending faith and fermentation. These women weren't just brewers, they were innovators and caretakers. Their names are woven into convent chronicles, their recipes whispered through generations. In some cases, they acted as early chemists experimenting with fermentation and herbal infusions, documenting effects on health and temperament. You imagine a quiet cloister where these sisters' robes gathered, exchange secrets, and swap notes, their ale recipes forming a sacred bond stronger than stone walls. Historians still debate how many such figures existed and the extent of their influence, given the male-dominated recording of history. But it's clear that these women played a vital role in brewing's development. Their legacy lives on not only in manuscripts and legends, but in the very culture of brewing that shaped Europe's social and economic fabric. As you ponder their stories, you raise an imaginary cup in silent tribute to these unsung pioneers who brewed not just ale, but history itself. You find yourself reflecting on the broader cultural impact of convent brewed ale, a humble drink that quietly shaped medieval society. Ale was more than refreshment. It was woven into the fabric of daily life, fuel for laborers, comfort for the weary, and a symbol of hospitality and community. In villages near convents, the ale flowed freely during festivals and religious celebrations, strengthening bonds and marking the rhythm of the seasons. Its taste influenced regional palates, inspiring local variations and brewing traditions that would echo through centuries. You overhear villagers speaking of the Nuns' ale with reverence, praising its unique balance of flavors and its gentle yet uplifting qualities. The drink became a medium for storytelling and social connection, a humble catalyst for moments both joyous and sacred. Women's role in brewing extended beyond the convent walls, influencing household brewing practices and shaping the social status of women as skilled artisans. Historians still debate how much convent brewing shaped larger societal norms, with some arguing it reinforced traditional roles while others see it as a quiet assertion of female expertise in a male-dominated world. You consider how these small acts of craft and community contributed to cultural continuity and change. As twilight descends, you imagine the flickering hearths where ale was shared, stories told, and traditions passed down, a legacy as rich and enduring as the brew itself. You sit quietly in your study, contemplating the ongoing debates among scholars about the true role of nuns in medieval brewing. Some argue that the tales of convent ale supremacy are romanticized legends, while others insist that nuns were central innovators whose contributions shaped the course of brewing history. You consider the evidence, a mix of surviving manuscripts, economic records, and oral traditions that paints a picture both complex and fascinating. The truth, as often, lies somewhere in the middle. Nuns were undoubtedly skilled brewers, masters of recipe and technique. Their efforts supported their communities spiritually, economically, and medicinally. Yet, like many women in history, their achievements were often overshadowed or underrecorded. You think about the convent's dual role as sacred spaces and centers of production, how the walls that echoed with prayer also housed bubbling vats and barrels. Historians still argue whether the prominence of convent breweries was regional or widespread, and how much influence they had on secular brewing practices. Your thoughts drift to the countless anonymous sisters who brewed in humble halls, whose careful hands and quiet dedication left a legacy now woven into every glass raised in gratitude. As night falls, you raise an imaginary ale in their honor to the women whose craft was both sacred art and everyday magic. The day winds down as you reflect on the enduring legacy of the nuns' brewing craft, a tradition that stretches beyond the cloister walls and into the very heart of modern brewing culture. Their dedication to quality, experimentation, and community welfare laid the foundation for many practices still valued today. You imagine the convent brewer's hand shaping history, with each carefully brewed batch, their quiet influence rippling through time. From humble alehouses to grand breweries, the spirit of their craft survives. The process of blending faith with fermentation created more than just beverages. It forged connections, sustained communities, and nurtured resilience. You think of the gentle clinking of mugs in medieval halls, the laughter shared over a well-brewed pint, and the countless moments of solace found in a humble cup of ale. As the sun sets for the final time in this story, you feel a soft satisfaction, a quiet celebration of skill, perseverance, and the simple joys that bind us across centuries. So, as you close your eyes and drift towards sleep, let the warmth of that ale's legacy soothe you, reminding you that even in the slowest, quietest histories, there is richness and life. Thank you for joining me tonight. May your dreams be as gentle and fulfilling as a well-brewed medieval ale.